All right, there's your seat.
Well, very good. Welcome to Wofford College. I'm Nate Samhat, president. There we go. Welcome to Wofford College. I'm Nate Samhat, president of the college, and I'm delighted you've joined us this evening for yet another great event brought to Wofford College by Van Hipp and the Hipp Center for International Affairs and National Security. Of course, I'd like to thank Van, Wofford class of 1982, who has made this event and many other provocative, thought-provoking events on our campus possible. Van is the chairman of American Defense International in Washington, D.C., Although many of you may know him as a commentator on the sideline during Wofford Terrier football games from around the world. He comes on any given Saturday to call the games. And so we're always happy to welcome Van to Wofford College, either as Wofford Terrier football commentator or as host for another Van Hipp lecture series event. Thank you, Van.
Thank you, President Sam Hatt. And one of the fun things about doing Wofford football, I think this will be my 13th or 14th year. But one of the great things about it is you can get away with a whole lot of things, a lot of fun. And I got to tell you this too. I do like the mic and all, and the get up here that they've got for our talk tonight with Ambassador Branstad. This is a lot better quality than what we have on the sidelines for Wofford football. So, but it's a real pleasure to be back home and be here at Wofford. It brings back a lot of memories for me, and had a great time taking Ambassador Branstad and his folks around the campus, and he was just struck about the beauty of the campus and the school. And we are honored tonight to have a true American statesman. You hear that word, statesman and statesmanship, and there are very, very few who really symbolize what an American statesman is. Tonight, we're honored to have with us the longest serving governor in the history of the United States, a man who I believe was the most effective ambassador America ever had to China, a man who today serves as the president of the World Food Prize Foundation, which is really the Nobel Prize in the whole food and agriculture arena. And they've been all about inspiring people to come up with new technologies and new ways to feed the world population. And a man who has started and has served as chairman of the American Free Enterprise Chamber of Commerce, which today has become the leading voice for American small business and entrepreneurs and job creators in this country. He truly is. When I think about American statesmanship, Terry Branstad is someone who has really, I think, represents the blueprint of what American statesmanship should be in the 21st century. And we're honored to have him tonight. Please join with me in welcoming Ambassador Terry Branstad. Ambassador.
From Northern Iowa, I'll tell you. It's been a real honor for me to have the opportunity to serve the people of this country, and also, of course, my home state of Iowa. I had a couple of really great 8th grade teachers. Laura Seawick taught Iowa, she taught U.S. history, the 3 R's of good government: rights, respect, and responsibility. And I had Fred Smith, who taught Iowa history and civics, both 8th grade teachers. And from that time on, I said, I want to go into a career in public service and run for governor of Iowa. I never knew it would lead to being the first governor to host a young man named Xi Jinping, who's now the leader of China, when he was 31 years old, and led a delegation from our sister state, Hebei province of China. And then, of course, when President Trump found out about that, he said, well, you're an old friend of Xi Jinping in China, so I'm going to appoint you ambassador. And so I had to leave the office of governor, which I was elected to 6 times, to go to China to be the ambassador. And it was a challenging time to be there. COVID started in Wuhan while I was the ambassador. We dealt with the missile threats from North Korea and many other challenges. But it was a great honor to serve. And I will say this, despite our big differences with the totalitarian communist government in China, the Chinese people are wonderful people. They have a great work ethic, they're very committed to education of their children, and they're very family oriented. Unfortunately, they're saddled with a government that does tremendous surveillance, facial recognition, and all these other things that make it difficult for them to say what they really think. But anyway, I'm proud to be back in Iowa and to be at the World Food Prize and to have the opportunity to travel around the country and talk about the importance of public service. Just this weekend, I had the opportunity to go to a Character Counts Award dinner for Lisa Bluter, the coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes. And you know, she's the coach of Caitlin Clark. So Caitlin Clark is a graduate not only of the University of Iowa, but Dowling Catholic High School, where my children and grandchildren have gone to school. So it's a pretty exciting time. Of course, they ran into South Carolina, and you know what the results of that were.
Thank you, Ambassador. I don't know what to call you, Ambassador, Governor.
Yeah, I actually either. Most guys would still call me governor because I have the record of being the longest serving governor, of course. And I have some people tell me they grew up, they never knew there was another governor.
He's been for a while, let me tell you that right now. Let me tell you. Governor, when I think about your life of leadership, the phrase servant leadership comes to mind. I want to ask you, what are characteristics you think that make someone a great leader?
Well, first of all, you need to be a good listener. And you need to be genuinely interested in learning about other people and about businesses and looking at opportunities to try to help them. And you know, even today, I served as a state representative, lieutenant governor, and governor. I have people come up to me and tell me about things that I've done to help them and their family. I didn't even remember that I'd done that. But that's what public service is all about. Serving other people, looking for opportunities to do good things that are going to make a difference for people. I'm really proud of it. The person who succeeded me as governor is Kim Reynolds, and we changed our constitution back while I was governor from electing the governor and lieutenant governor separately to electing as a team. So when I came back, so I served 16 years as governor, 12 years sabbatical, came back and defeated an incumbent to come back as governor, and I chose Kim Reynolds to be my lieutenant governor. Well, I recommended her, but she was chosen by the party convention. And we did everything together. We did press conferences together. She was in on all the appointments to boards and commissions and judgeships and everything, and putting the budget together. And then I went off to China, and she had to deal with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, which started in China, but hit every state in this country. And she managed it so well, keeping schools open, keeping businesses open, keeping Iowans informed. She did a press conference every day to tell people what was going on. And she took a lot of flack, but she did the right thing. And today, Iowa is in the strongest economic position it's ever been. It's got a big $2 billion budget surplus. They've eliminated taxes on retirement, which I appreciate. And they're reducing the Iowa income tax to a flat 3.8%. So I like to say she's improved in everything I taught her.
We did the same thing in South Carolina. The lieutenant governor used to be elected separately, and now we're running a team. So maybe we're running
Well, and I'm going to get to see your governor tomorrow.
He's looking forward to seeing.
And I've heard great things about Governor Branstad.
And he also kept us stay over and kept jobs going and kept the people informed.
And it's such a contrast to other states like Minnesota and Illinois that didn't do that and are now paying the price. And the school kids especially, the ones with disabilities and from poor families, are the ones who are hurt the most.
When you know your time as Ambassador of China, what surprises you about living in the People's Republic of China, and what was the highlight of your experience?
Well, I think the highlight of my experience was I wanted to go to every province. As governor, I went to every county every year. So I wanted to go to Iowa, the state of the country of China has 31 provinces and autonomous regions. And I wanted to go to all of them. I got to 26 of the 31 before COVID shut down travel. I did get to Tibet. I took 3 requests of the Chinese government before they finally approved me to go to Tibet. But I got there. And I took my grandchildren up to see the ice festival in Harbin up in the north. They carve ice out of the rivers and make these big ice castles. And and then we also, another neat thing happened. When I arrived, I had a press conference with my whole family. My daughter was over there teaching at the International School of Beijing, her and her husband and 2 granddaughters and my wife. And Xi Jinping saw that on TV. And so when I presented my credentials, which every new ambassador has to do to the leader of the country, there were 11 of us, I think, that presented our credentials that day. But he asked me to stay back, and at the end he said, my wife and I would like to host you and your family that's here in China for dinner with us. And he did that, along with his 25-year-old daughter. And my granddaughters had learned enough Mandarin to be able to sing a poem to him in Mandarin. That was a big hit. I don't think those girls ever forget about that experience that they had.
Absolutely. What was the biggest challenge for you during your tenure in China?
Well, it was the COVID pandemic and the fact that the Chinese were not honest or open about it. They made us think everything was fine. Their approach was to have these lockdowns and quarantines, and it didn't work. It just put off eventually what happened, and they ended up with a significant toll, but it happened much later in China than many other places. But this happens every time there's a crisis. The Chinese, we had people from the CDC that were there with us at the embassy, and we're offering them help, and saying, we want to assist. And they wouldn't answer, they wouldn't return our phone calls. And everybody planned up until eventually they got the word from the leadership, from Xi Jinping, and then they all said the same thing. And that happened not just during that crisis, but other crises that have occurred over the last many decades. We had an issue where I think a Chinese fighter jet that collided with an American jet, and the American plane had to land on the island that's part of China, and that was another. And then there was an accidental bombing of, I think, of an embassy in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, decades ago. But every time something like that happens, you just can't get information. And of course, the whole system. Remember, the Communist Party controls they control the education system, they control the media, and they control everything. And they put out what they want people to hear. And for instance, while I was there, you were seeing demonstrations in Hong Kong. And one of the things they did was they basically, Hong Kong was supposed to be in British agreement with the Chinese was for 50 years, would be one country, 2 systems, and they would have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, elect their own people. That all changed during the pandemic in 2020, and then they lost those freedoms.
Given the state of the relationship between the U.S. and China, were you able to accomplish anything? And so, what was your proudest achievement?
Achievement of the phase one trade agreement. I'm from an agricultural state, and we produce way more corn, soybeans, and beef and pork than we can possibly consume. So we need an export market, and China is a huge country with a growing middle class. And so we spent the better part of 3 years before we finally got the phase one trade agreement. And I worked with Sonny Perdue, who was the Secretary of Agriculture, with the negotiators on that. And we ended up with, and the Chinese, once that agreement was reached, purchased a record amount of soybeans, corn, pork, beef, and we even got back into the market with chicken. But Sonny Perdue and I opened the beef market, and I'll never forget that because it was closed for 14 years because of the mad cow, and the mad cow was from Canada. We got it reopened, and Sonny Perdue came over to do that. I've got to tell you that the beef was from Nebraska. Anyway, we got it done.
Should we fear China today?
I think we've got to recognize that China is a growing, not only economic, but military power. They are building a huge navy. Before, they never had aircraft carriers. Now they're, I don't know, they have 3 or 4, and they're growing, and they're getting into space exploration. They militarized the South China Sea. That's a great concern because we're concerned. It's always been in the U.S. Navy to protect Taiwan, but it's going to be very difficult in the future. And Xi Jinping says that he wants Taiwan back under the China government in Beijing. I think it's just a matter of time.
Is there any hope to improve the bilateral relationship with China, or should we just disconnect?
I think it would be a terrible mistake to disconnect because obviously we need that market, and American consumers appreciate the quality and safety of the Chinese goods. But we've got to be smart. We've got to be careful. We've got to protect our national security. Things like TikTok, which is owned by a company that is what they call a state-owned enterprise. So they're controlled by the Communist Party. And we're real concerned about the impact that can have on our national security and the impact it can have on personal privacy of American citizens. So you may be aware that there's movement in Congress to require the sale of TikTok within a year. And I hope that happens because I think and there's a lot of new people who watch TikTok, and I think it's got a potential for a lot of bad things.
Amen. One thing is the biggest threat to our relationship with China.
The biggest threat to our relationship is the fact that we have been asleep at the switch while they've been constantly building not only their economy, but all their military and their support, their support for what the Russians have done in Ukraine and that sort of thing. So I think we've got to be smarter about that. I think we don't want to make the same mistake we did with Ukraine. We need to arm Taiwan and support them as a deterrent to prevent an aggressive action on the part of the Chinese.
given their system of government, what are they able to do easier or better than the United States? And what do we do better than China?
Well, first of all, we have freedom of speech and assembly, and we have so many more freedoms for individual citizens. Individual citizens in China doesn't have those kind of freedoms. They don't dare speak out against government, or they lose their right to go on a high-speed train, to get an airplane ticket, to get a visa. So people live in fear. What they can do, they can build things much faster. They built new airports, high-speed trains, buildings like you can't believe. First time I went to China in '84, there were no tall buildings. Everybody's still wearing the Mao uniforms. We rode an old steam locomotive, coal-fired steam locomotive from Beijing to Shijiazhuang. Now, there's tall buildings everywhere. And I will say this, it's a much cleaner country. They planted a lot of trees and shrubs and whatever to try to improve it. So I want to give it an accurate impression. But when it comes to the freedoms that we take for granted, they don't have.
Your background, governor, ambassador, president of the World Food Prize Foundation, chairman of Freedom of American Commerce. But what was very interesting to me, and you and I talked about this before, in between your tenure as governor, or how many years, the first time, the second, you were the president of Des Moines University. The second oldest hospitality medical school in the nation. And we've got a great hospitality medical school, Davis School, across the street here in Utah. And they do so much in the rural health. Our doctors from the DOD, I'm a big fan of it. Talk about that time and hospitality medicine and in your role as president.
Well, it's real interesting. As governor, I gained a great respect. We've got two medical schools alive. University of Iowa, which is an MD school, and we have a College of Hospitality Medicine in Des Moines. And I gained great respect for the private school, the Des Moines University, because they were training doctors for rural Iowa, training more family practice physicians than any other medical school in America. So when I left the governorship, the president of the university asked if I would go on the board of trustees. Well, I was taking on a bunch of stuff, so I said no. But 2 years later, he said, we really like to have you on the board. I went on the board, and then a few years later, he decided to retire. And they doing a nationwide search for a new president. Well, the chairman of the board was a doctor from Sandusky, Ohio, named Gil Buckles. He also was a pilot. He flew to Des Moines and invited me to lunch at the Wine Club, which is a private club. I should have figured something's up. And his first question is, and remember, I'm a junior member of the board. He's a senior doctor on the board. And he said, have you ever considered being president of the university? And I said, well, no, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an academic. He says, well, we need somebody to raise the visibility, respect, and recognition of the school, raise money for the school, and manage and oversee the operation. I think he got the skill set we're looking for. But you gotta respect the process. So you gotta submit a CV, meet with the search committee, and go through the whole process. Well, I talked to my wife about it, decided to apply, and 7 months later, I chose as president. And I served as president there for 6 years and 4 months. And during that time, we increased the enrollment in all the schools. So we have hospitality medicine, podiatric medicine, health sciences. We teach physical therapy and physician assistant studies. We have a master's in public health and healthcare administration. We had a couple other masters, one in biotechnology and one in anatomy while I was there. I was thinking of adding the College of Optometry. If I'd stayed with them, they recruited me to run the governor name. Now, in Des Moines, we also have Drake University. That's where I went to law school. So these two seniors at Drake University started a movement on Facebook to traveling to run for governor. Well, I've been governor for 11 years. And they weren't old enough to vote when I was governor before, and Facebook didn't exist. But they got 10,000 people set up on Facebook asking to run for governor. Well, on that thing, they got my attention, and I decided to do it, so I retired. Now, this was strategic. I retired from the one university because we built a new student education center that had this wonderful wellness center, and it's only 9 blocks from the governor's residence. So, and it's available for faculty, staff, students, alumni, and retirees. So by a retiree, I can still work out there. I was thinking, yeah, win the election, I can continue to work out there, and I did. And so, it was quite an experience, and I'm really proud to say that we tripled the financial aid to students while I was there. We started a scholarship called the Blanton Scholarship for minority students. The first African-American judge in Iowa was Luther Blanton, and he served on our board. His wife, Louie Blanton, was the first black woman to serve in the Iowa legislature. After Judge Blanton passed away, she served on the board, so I decided to start a scholarship to honor them for what they've done, and that scholarship now is over $5 million in down scholarship. We have a fundraiser every year for that, and it's kind of funny what we did with the scholarship. I had appointed the chief justice of the Supreme Court of La Crosse, and I had appointed the chief judge of the Polk County District Court, which Judge Blanton served on. Blanton was a big black man who had a very deep voice, and he stood, somebody that is accused of crime and come before him, he'd scare them so much that they'd go straight, they not get in trouble. So I asked the two judges, I said, I want you to tell Blanton's stories at the dinner. So we kept it short and just focused on, and people had such a good time. They said, well, why don't you make this an annual event? That's how every year we raise money, and that's how we got the $5 million scholarship. Well, we've done it, you know. I hope to get 100,000 the first year. We raised 150, and now it's over 300,000 a year. It's raised.
And right, it makes a difference in the rural areas where we need.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of, that's the other thing about schools. They've accepted women and minorities from the beginning, and our school does. And like you said, rural areas is where you critically need physicians these days.
Back when you were our ambassador to China, given what you know now, if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't think I do anything differently. Basically, the difference between governor and being ambassador is when you're governor, you're the chief executive of your state. You can set the tone. You deliver the condition of state address. You sign or veto all bills. You have the power to appoint judges and other people serve in your administration. When you're ambassador, you work for the United States of America. You're appointed by the president. You can be fired by the president. And I had a really good friend who was the ambassador to China from Canada. And he said something back in Canada that treated him like he fired him. In fact, my wife and I had a dinner for a lot of the ambassadors and their spouses, and we invited the Canadian ambassador's spouse to come to the dinner as a going away appreciation dinner. And she had to move him out. He didn't even get to go back to China. So I'm pleased to say I never got fired. I didn't as an ambassador. And I worked for Donald Trump, and you know, but I will say I had a great relationship with President Trump. Whenever I come back to the White House, I report to him on what's going on, and he was very helpful. He played a very key role in getting us he did something that it took a little courage to do. He put tariffs on the Chinese. They never had it. They always had tariffs on us, but we never had tariffs on them. It got their attention. I think it eventually led to the trade agreement that we received. Not perfect, but it's been a big improvement, and it's made a real difference for the sale of our manufacturing as well as agricultural products, but especially agricultural products.
Speaking of President Trump, your boss, he's running for president again. Were you, as our ambassador to China, were you able, look back at it, were you able to influence him on China policy?
Yes. One of the things that I'm really proud of that he did was he approached, when I went over there, the North Koreans were testing nuclear missiles all the time. And he had the guts to actually meet with Kim Jong-un. And they were still making threats, and I will give Nikki Haley credit because she was appointed to be ambassador to the United Nations, and she was able to get the Russians and the Chinese to support the sanctions on North Korea. And that was something that Trump wanted, and my gosh, she got that done, so I'll give her credit for that as well. But, and I'm a strong supporter of renewable energy, ethanol, biodiesel, stuff like that. And one time I was back and went to the Iowa State Fair, and the EPA had just granted waivers to the renewable fuel standard. Iowa farmers were mad as could be. So I went to the White House and I reported that to the president. His staff was really mad, but the president called the head of the EPA who was giving a speech in Alaska, asked him what the hell was going on, and helped us get that straightened out. So I will say, and my son probably has a better relationship with Trump because my son was director of his state campaign twice in 2016 and 20. And in 2016, things were looking pretty good in Iowa, and says, "We got troubles in Wisconsin, would you go up there and help?" And so he did, and Trump carried both Iowa and Wisconsin. So the former President Trump still talks to my son from time to time just to get his advice and counsel. So you met him, he's my oldest son, Eric. He's got 4 daughters. And that's a tough job.
They visited you, China.
They did. Well, in fact, Trump, in his last speech before the 2016 election, called me back up on the stage and says, "Well, Governor Branstad can take care of China for us." Well, a lot of people didn't think he was going to win the election, but he did. And I had a trade mission planned with China and Japan meeting the Friday after the election. I didn't think my wife was ever going to agree to it. But while I'm gone, my 2 sons and daughter, who ended up teaching over there, showed up at Terrace Hill. The governor's president said, "If Dad gets offered the opportunity to invest in China, don't turn it down, we want to go." And I came back, and much to my surprise, she says, "Don't assume I'm against it." And she was, my wife loved to be entertained. She plays mahjong, and now she and some friends play mahjong every Wednesday. And she got to know a lot of the other ambassadors' wives, enjoyed entertaining while we were there. So it turned out to be, even during difficult times with COVID and everything else, it was a good experience. And the Chinese people treated us well. Never had to fear for our safety. In fact, the only people with guns are the police and the military. And they don't want anything bad to happen to the American ambassador. So we can go out and walk at night, walk for dinner, whatever, no problem. You got no privacy. They tell the story about a previous ambassador who observed that they didn't have any bananas. All of a sudden they showed up. So you know that everything he said was being overheard.
Well, we've got a few questions from one of our students here tonight. First, I'm going to call on Grace Stapp. And Grace, let us know, tell the audience what you're majoring in and where you're from, and then ask the master your questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Grace Stout. I'm a freshman here. I'm double majoring in international affairs and German. And Ambassador and Governor Branstad, I would like to ask you tonight, how did your personal meetings with President Xi in Iowa influence your approach to diplomatic relations with the PRC?
Well, I think we need to recognize it's all building personal relations. I had gone to China in '84 to visit our sister state. It was like going back in time. But the people were very friendly and treated us very well. And so Xi Jinping led a group of 5 young men and had a delegation to Iowa in '85. Because we didn't treat so well there, we went all out to make him feel welcome. I assigned a young man named Luca Baroni, who was an Italian immigrant, to drive him all over Iowa. He stayed with the Borgia family in Muscatine. Sarah Landy was in charge of organizing this trip. He calls us all old friends. When I came back to China, the second time as governor, many years later, this is 2011, normally in the governor's office, I give people half hour. He spent 45 minutes telling me how much he loved Iowa, and he calls us all old friends and he met. So that, and I will say, when I was ambassador, the only time I get to meet with him other than when he had that special dinner that I don't think they ever had for an American governor before, I go with President Trump when he was there in 2017, or cabinet members, and that's why I got to meet with him. But we had a good personal relationship, and yeah, obviously I had a huge disagreement with his policies. We thought he would be a reformer, like Deng Xiaoping, like his father, who was the governor of Guangdong province, but he's gone in the direction of a hardline approach.
Any other questions? Good question.
Thank you very much.
I think you can.
Yeah.
You can do the second.
One more. How was your job as ambassador affected by the outbreak of COVID-19?
Would you repeat that?
Yes, sorry. How was your job as ambassador affected by the outbreak of COVID-19?
Well, we were in Australia on Chinese New Year trip when I kept talking to the staff at the embassy every day, and it says getting worse, and they're going to close the border, and you're not going to be able to come back. I'm chief of the mission, I thought I'd be there. So we had a congregation short to get back, and then we sent 1,300 people back to the United States from our embassy and from the constance. And I'm proud to say we got them back to China before I left in October of 2020. But it was a challenging time to be here, and COVID was probably the worst of it. And in fact, the Chinese government was not willing to honestly tell us the situation was frustrating.
Thank you.
I think we have another offer, student William Smith.
Williams.
William Smith. And tell us where you're from and your major. And what year?
My name is William Smith. I'm a sophomore, international affairs and Spanish major, minor in economics. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. And my question for you is, how did you prepare for your role as an ambassador and for the strategic responsibilities that came along with it?
Well, of course, before you can be ambassador, you have to be appointed by the president and confirmed by the United States Senate. And so I had to go before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Fortunately, I had two senators from Iowa, good friends of mine, Chuck Grassley and Tony Anderson, and they introduced me. And I've done a lot of international travel as governor and established a number of sister states around the world. And so I was able to answer some of the tough questions that the senators asked me during confirmation. I have seen Secretary of State Olson's confirmation on TV, and I don't know why this is on here. But that turned out not to be for me, and I ended up getting strong bipartisan support. I only had about a dozen senators vote against me, and most of those were Democrats that wanted to run for president. And they didn't want to say, help confirm the Republican governor from office. Other than that, it went pretty well. One of the things I learned in the confirmation process was the trouble that was being caused by fentanyl and the deaths from fentanyl all over the country. And I promised that I would really work on that. And we did. And there's a delegation of senators that came to China, headed by Alexander from Tennessee. And we brought that issue up. And I then went to the White House and asked President Trump if he would ask Xi Jinping to make all of fentanyl a controlled substance in China. He did, and the Chinese made a controlled substance. But here's the problem. They are making the precursors, which are now being made in fentanyl in Mexico. So they made it a controlled substance in China, but hadn't solved the problem.
My second question for you, you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but I was wondering how has working as an ambassador to the PCR affected your understanding of trade relations, especially in regards to increasing manufacturing in the United States?
Very critically important. As governor, that was economic development and education for my priorities. Trade is an important part of that. We're a big agriculture producing state. We also a major manufacturing state. And so I wanted to do anything and everything I could to try to expand trade. And I mentioned that President Trump put tariffs on China. That got their attention and ended up, I think, leading to us getting the phase 1 trade agreement, which isn't perfect, but it's dramatically increased, especially our exports of agricultural goods. We also obviously learned from the pandemic that we needed to produce more of our pharmaceuticals in the United States, so we're not so dependent on China and other countries for those things. And by the way, I did put a task force together to get PPE and pharmaceuticals from China to the United States during the worst of the pandemic. I think we got 150 plane loads sent here. We didn't get a lot of publicity on that. We didn't really want a lot of publicity, but we just wanted to try to help people.
Thank you.
Thank you. What you just talked about pharmaceuticals, there was actually a hearing in Congress last week that one of the top doctors from the Department of Defense is all about how do we, from a supply chain standpoint, how do we make drugs again in America, not at the dependency on China for our active pharmaceutical use.
It's critically important because when we went through the pandemic, I think, proves why we need to produce more in the United States and not be dependent on a sole source like China.
Yeah. Another offer student, a couple of questions. Jackson Forrest. And Jackson, let us know where you're from and what you're majoring in and what year.
I'm Jackson. I'm a junior here at Wofford College. I'm majoring in international affairs and Spanish, and I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. So I got 2 questions for you. I'll ask them one at a time. So first off, what was your most significant challenge that you faced during your ambassadorship?
Well, I I think the pandemic will be the biggest challenge. And the fact that the Chinese can just clam up and not honestly tell you what was really going on. They would downplay it, and then they had this lockdown approach, and so if you went to a region of China where there was COVID, you couldn't go to a restaurant or store. They would check on your cell phone where you've been, and bam, you would not be permitted in. So we're not used to that kind of stuff in the United States. We have freedom of travel wherever we go. Nobody checked my credentials and to fly down here to South Carolina. But let me tell you, even in China, if you live in another part of the country and work, let's say in one of the cities along the East Coast, along the coast, your children are not provided education or healthcare there. They have to stay with the grandparents. It's totally a different system than ours. And, they say it's a communist system, everything's free. Well, the heck it is. No, but that's why a lot of the Chinese people save so much money. Because if they do have a healthcare issue in their family, they might not have to pay.
All right, and then my second question, which I think is very important for the United States from a security standpoint, is how should we conceptualize the People's Republic of China's increasing engagement and physical presence in Latin America, specifically in South America?
Well, it's not just in South America, it's also in Africa, it's in Asia, it's in Europe, it's a lot of places. They have this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative, and China wants to call themselves a developing country. They are a rich, highly developed country, and they're using their money and influence and building these things to their benefit. Now, unfortunately, in many of the countries, they've been saddled with a lot of debt. It's been built by Chinese labor, and then they have all this debt. And in many cases, they've been taken over ports in foreign countries because of the debt. So I think we've got to be very careful of that. I won't say it's all bad. There's some good things they've done with their construction work around the world, but especially the debt issue, I think is a huge problem. And I was in China, I saw countries from all over Africa or from South America come there to get huge grants. The other concern we have, I'm from Ohio, an agricultural state, they're investing a lot in Brazil. Brazil doesn't have the infrastructure we do in the United States, but the Chinese are building a lot of the infrastructure, which is going to be a major competitor of ours in soybeans, corn, and any other agricultural products.
And taking that's a great question. Taking Jackson's question a step further, there's also been reports about more Chinese nationals coming across our southern border, China buying land next to military bases in the United States. We'd love to have your thoughts.
With regard to buying land, we have since the 1970s had a law in Iowa that foreign individuals and foreign companies cannot buy land in Iowa. And they just strengthened that law in Iowa this year. I'm concerned about that, and I think they were buying some land in North Dakota, but I think that's been stopped, but that's a grave concern. They bought a lot of timberland out west in Oregon and states like that. That concerns me. And the other concern is that obviously the implications that has to our national defense. If it's close to military bases and they're spying, we also had a Chinese balloon that traveled all the way across this country, was actually shot down off the coast of South Carolina.
You know, I was people in South Carolina already shooting down before it got.
Well, they should have shut it down when you entered, airspace. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one question. Thank you for being here. I'm retired Lieutenant Colonel T.Ray Moore, chaplain.
Thank you, yes, sir.
And my grandson graduated from Walford here 4 years ago, and he was on the football team. It was a good time too. He's due to graduate from the Medical University of Charleston very soon.
Well, I gotta tell you a story about that medical school. When I was in Charleston promoting Florida, the trooper was Mike Kennedy, and he kept telling me that the president of that medical school in Charleston is a former governor, Governor Edwards.
Right.
He kept saying he's an old surgeon. I thought, gosh, this is disrespectful. He's calling an old surgeon. Well, and but it actually was saying oral surgeon. And how did this your son did that school now?
Yeah, he graduated, I guess, momentarily. He married a girl from Clemson, and she's a nurse. But,
Well, that's great. We need healthcare professionals.
he was a starting tight end here on the football team for 2 years. Anyway, I wanted to just put out some information and ask a question and follow up. I'm in the ministry, and I've got a close friend that we were colleagues together years ago who has a ministry where he goes to third world countries and trains pastors.
Yes.
And where a lot of them do a good job. They have maybe a Bible dictionary. They don't have a lot of help. So he goes and trains them and gives them a pretty good education. And he was in China right when the COVID hit. And he'd been there 6 weeks, and he left at that time. And he reported to me, and I've heard other reports. He said there's 100 million Protestant evangelical Christians in China and about 20 million Catholics. And he says the church is, I think that's about 7%. He said the church in China is growing so fast. He said by 2030, now this is, we're projecting, and he told me this about 2 years ago, so I don't know where they are today. He said there will be perhaps 200 million Protestant Christians in China and no telling how many Roman Catholics. About 80% of the church in China is unregistered underground. And it's really exploding, one of the fastest growing churches in the world. And I wonder, going forward, how do you see that affecting their policies, their social attitudes, and what benefit could it be to China and maybe to world politics?
Well, unfortunately, the Chinese government for a long time has really had a game for missionaries. I don't know if you read about what happened back in 1900 with the, what do they call that? The Bachi Rebellion. And they specifically targeted foreigners and missionaries. My concern is whenever they see a rise of religion, it could be any organized, but not just religion, they crack down on it.
Right.
And that's why it's underground, because people are afraid. And a good example, and somebody in a religious group called Falun Gong, was more an exercise-related group, but it was really catching on, and they banned it. When I got back to Washington, D.C., I would see big demonstrations of people involved with Falun Gong. In fact, at the precinct caucus I went to in my hometown of Johnston this year, there was a Chinese woman there, and she said she got out of China because she was involved with Falun Gong.
Yeah.
So, and they have even harvested organs from members of Falun Gong stuff. So I'm not, in terms of, my wife and I are Catholic, and we went to Mass at the Canadian Embassy, but the only people that could go there were foreigners. And we have people from Africa and Asia and Europe and the United States from all over. It was really wonderful, but no Chinese. And I did go to the Chinese, what they call it, patriotic church once. Here's what I observed. First, this is in the wintertime, the doors were open. We sat up towards the front with our coats on, but, everything is at the Catholic Church is controlled by the Communist Party, and it is controlled by the Communist Party.
It's underground, about 80%.
Right, so, and I did visit a couple of those underground Catholic churches too, but from time to time they come in and deface them and things like that.
I could read it.
You bet.
That's one of the questions from Walker student, and was given to me. Do you think the PRC will invade Taiwan in the next 5 years? And if so, what do you think would be the trigger or tipping point that would cause the PRC to invade?
When they feel they have overwhelming military superiority and take Taiwan. The big problem is Taiwan has got a tremendous amount of manufacturing, especially of chips, and the Chinese don't want to destroy that. And there's some rumors that if they try to invade Taiwan, we would destroy it. And of course, the whole world would suffer from that. So, I don't know. I think the best thing we can do is be sure we're doing everything we can to support Taiwan's military so that they're capable of deterring. But the biggest challenge is the Chinese are in the process of becoming dominant in the South China Sea, where the American military, the American Navy was always dominant. And I think when they feel that they have overwhelming superiority, Xi Jinping said it. He wants Taiwan on his watch. He's just been given a 5-year term, so I don't know. I'm trying to predict when it will happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the near future, but I think the more we project weakness, the more likely it is. And certainly what happened with Afghanistan and what's happened in Ukraine is not good.
And this has been a real treat for Wofford tonight, and for our students and the community. We've got all those watching on live stream, a lot of those all over South Carolina, and it's been a real treat. If everyone here, we're going to have a reception for Master Branstad afterwards, right out front there in front of Old Man. We'd ask you to join. And tomorrow morning at 6:45, if you want to get early and get that coffee pot going, CNN is going to interview Master Branstad live from Spartanburg and talk to him about his visit here at Wofford College. Please join me and thank you, Master Branstad, a true American statesman.
Dan, thank you, and thanks to the audience. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here. And congratulations at our school and all the good things you're doing. Thank you.